Good evening, everybody. Please, can I just get a thumbs up if you can hear me loud and clear? Perfect. Okay, I just want to share my screen and then we can kick off with some so firstly, once again, good evening to everyone. My name is Nirsa Haricharan, and I will be your lecturer this semester for this group for LSTM 5121. This is my third year doing this modules, and I think I'm on the fifth time doing this specific module. So I've done it every semester since I've started at Varsity College online. So I do have just a little bit of experience to try and teach you something. If there is any background noises, please just ignore it. I have a 4-year-old running around and 3 dogs, so there may be a little bit of background noise, okay? So just for today, we're going to start off with an introduction. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself, etc. We're going to go through the case that I developed for this semester. And then we're going to run into our Learning Unit 1, Theme 1, which is basically the very basics of supply chain. So yeah, okay, this is me. As I said, my name is Nirsa. I currently live in Durban in South Africa. I am a regional branch manager for a global or international logistics company. And our focus is primarily on Korea. I do have almost 14 years of experience in the industry, so that's in the logistics supply chain space. So my sort of area of focuses primarily on the KZN region. So that's Richards Bay, Newcastle, Port Shepstone, sort of right down actually into a little bit of the Eastern Cape, Durban, Pietermaritzburg. And as I said, focus is on Korea, so both domestic and international. And then I have experience in FHC freight, road freight as well. I currently have 2 master's degrees. I've got a master's in commerce in supply chain management. And in 2024, I completed an NQF level 9 for an international executive development program for women at Gibbs. So it was a year program, so master's equivalent. And basically just 15 women from the transport industry that was chosen around South Africa to get together in a room and understand leadership, understand transport sector, the challenges, the strengths, etc. And yeah, and that's basically me in a nutshell. This is my email address below. So please use it. I am a WhatsApp person, so I will respond to you much quicker than I would on email. I do have a full-time job, so I can't always get to my emails on time, but I'm always on my phone. So if I don't respond to you in the minute or the hour, I'll definitely respond to you within the day. I would like to consider myself not to be a lecturer per se, but because I have a little bit of experience in the logistics and the supply chain industry, both from a commercial and an operational perspective, there's a lot of stories that I like to tell in lectures based on experience that I've had or based on customers that I've visited that have seen certain aspects of changes in supply chain or operations management. So it does help, especially when you want to try and bring a theoretical term down to common knowledge for you to understand it better. I can speak the supply chain jargon, but not everybody will understand the supply chain jargon. So yeah, basically I'm here to support you and to help you throughout the semester. Okay, so we're going to go through just a little bit, which is number one, there is a WhatsApp group. So if you haven't joined it, please join it. I have posted the WhatsApp group link on ARC under the announcements. So please make sure you do join that. I love to use the WhatsApp group, especially when we get into the content, whether it's scholar articles, whether it's journal entries, whether it is, um, you know, assignment, sort of tips, or if you have any questions at all that we can clarify as a group or help you, that's basically what we're using the group for. The textbook, this is a textbook. It is in your module outline as well. So you'll be able to see it. I don't think I posted your module outline on under the announcements, so I will do that. I do have a copy of it, so I'll make sure to post that if you didn't already download your own. Please, it is not even a request, it's more of an instruction that you have to get the textbook. I have had students in the past that went through the semester without a textbook and not doing well in assignments, and thereafter obviously not passing an examination, and asking for a textbook or an ebook late into semester. It doesn't help anybody, doesn't help you as well. So please make sure you get your textbook in as early as possible. Your ICE task will kick in quite early, so make sure that you get it in as early as you possibly can. So in this module, and in supply chain in general, so if you're obviously going to go further into supply chain, you're going to need to understand the difference between theory and application. So supply chain, a lot of it has to do with application. So if you have, for instance, a let's say it's called Porter's competitive strategies, for instance. You need to understand what Porter's competitive strategies are, but you will also get a case study in which you need to apply it. So it's not one of those modules that you can cram in the night before and then just spit everything out on paper. It's not going to work like that. So you're going to have to understand how the world works, how developed and developing countries work in terms of their logistics, their supply chain, their operations, different big industries or companies like a PepsiCo and Apple, Microsoft, how their supply chains are related. So you need to properly understand completely how it works in order for you to then apply it into a case study format. Right. The next one is to make sure that all your assessments are done and it is submitted on time. The deadline is what? The 23:59. And obviously they'll give you a date, but please do not even be a second after that. You already start getting penalized the moment you go over that deadline. So please make sure, take into account technical errors, load shedding, Wi-Fi going down, all of these things, and make sure that you are fully engaged in order for you to submit on time. Okay, next one is referencing. So I'm singing the song from the very first lecture, okay? I've had students in the past that did brilliantly in an assignment, said all of the right things, ticked all the boxes, but they had absolutely no referencing. You immediately get penalized. If you don't have in-text referencing or in-text referencing, you get penalized anything from 5% up until 20%. So make sure that you understand the IIE referencing guide, very similar to a Harvard referencing. Or if you are not sure, visit the library, go to the library sessions, understand how to reference. Referencing is such a key or pivotal part of your CAS, purely because you have to turn in every assignment, and turn it in immediately pulls up when there is anything to do with plagiarism because you haven't referenced correctly. So let's make sure that you get an understanding of this as early as you possibly can in the semester, and this is going to help you in the long run. I can tell you that for sure. And then anything to do with marking, whether it is an ICE task, an assignment, or your examination, I do all of the marking for this module. I do not set the papers, but I do all of the marking. So for the assignment specifically, I have between a 7 to 8 day deadline. I try and get it done between the 6 and 7 days. Once it's done, I will then post a message on our group chat to tell you marking has been completed. You can check your results. It will be available on Student Portal as well as on ARC. Then you have full reign over it. With IceTask, it's a little bit different, which I will explain to you when I go through the PACER. For the actual assignment, I will provide you with feedback on any question that I feel you scored short in, on how to basically improve or what you lacked in, etc. However, the IceTask, it is a lot of IceTask for me to do that for every question. So I may give you a very generic feedback, or if it's all good, I may not give you feedback at all. But assignments, 100% you will get feedback from me. Okay, so that's basically most of everything in a nutshell. As we go along, you will understand how I do things, which to help you. And if there's anything more you want to see, or you want any more additions into the lectures, you just let me know, and I'm happy to take any advice at all. Quickly, does anybody have any questions so far? We all good? Okay, yes, I have a question there. Is that your hand up or your thumb supposed to be up? Okay, there we go. Okay, please also don't. You are more than welcome to unmute at any time, contribute, or if you have a question, happy to answer it, okay? So in this particular semester, we have 4 IceTasks. And I've already put together the dates, and I got it down in the PACER, which we'll go through now. So this contributes to 10% of your IceTasks. The first assignment, sorry, just give me a second. Then we have assignment 1, which is Learning Unit 1 and Learning Unit 2. Those dates I'm going to confirm with you. And then we have assignment 2, which is 25% of your CAS mark. And these dates as well will be a confirmation. And the last one is your written unseen examination, meaning that you are walking into the exam room, not seeing any case study in advance. You are basically just walking in and writing your examination. Okay. So this is basically what a PACER looks like. I have put together all of the dates from the 17th of February right down to, I think it's the 26th of May, if I'm not mistaken. That will be our very last lecture. So today, obviously being the 17th of February, we are going to do introduction, as well as Learning Unit 1, Theme 1, which falls under Chapter 1. And then we have a live lecture, which we all are here together. However, our lectures only correspond with each other every second week, which means that every alternate week that we do not have a lecture, I will be doing a recording for you. This recording will be done under our Teams channel, which is where you would have seen your meeting request come from. Further to that, that recording will be available on YouTube. So I will send you the YouTube channel link at the end of maybe by tomorrow morning. Sometimes when the lectures are a bit long, it does take a while for it to get downloaded. So let's just say worst case scenario, by tomorrow morning, I will have that uploaded with the link posted on ARC. So because there's so many, there's 6 learning units with multiple themes under each learning unit, it is a bit difficult to go through all of the content in our very little sessions that we have together. So I like to push as much content as I possibly can, making sure that I get the recordings done at least. So that covers bulk of the content as well. So you'll see that the recordings that I would do will be more content related, story related, but I'll try and bring in more of the humor and the experience part in our live lecture so you can, go through it with me. So you'll see here on my right, or on this right, all of the ICE tasks are there. I've put in the assignment because that's more or less when I think the assignment is going to be due. But I mean, this is subject to change. It is version 1. We're going to have up until probably 2 to 3 versions until the last pass is updated, which will be closer to your exam. But the ICE task dates will not change. So these dates that I posted here, 10th March, 24th March, 14th April, and 5th of May, these follow through where a week before these due dates, I will post the ICE task on ARC. You will have the week to basically complete the ICE task and then post your completed ICE task onto ARC again. However, these are my dates, meaning these are soft dates, right? Towards the end of semester, I will give you probably a 2-week notice to tell you that this is now the hard date for ICE task that is due. So if during the semester you miss out an ICE task, you completely maybe forgot about it, or whatever the case may be, you still have an opportunity to still change that. Okay, meaning that you can still go forward and complete it before that final due date. Okay, so let's make sure that we get all of this done before time. By making sure we get it all done, we'll be in a better space instead of you having to cram everything in lastminute.com. Okay, I've seen students do that, and let's just say it doesn't help the case, especially when you are preparing for assignments in between, as well as any sort of test in between. So let's just make sure that we get everything done by the soft due date. That is my advice to you. Okay, is there any questions so far before we start our actual content? Okay, perfect. Post both the introduction slides as well as the pacer on ARC under the announcements page, so you have full view of that. Every time I change the pacer, I will repost it and I will call it a different version, so you now know that you're keeping the most updated version with you. Actual content right now. So the first part of our lecture, which is our Learning Unit 1, Theme 1, is asking the simple question of what is supply chain? So this is obviously the theoretical textbook definition, and it's basically saying that it's the administration of goods and services from point of origin to point of consumption or destination. And it has a whole host of different activities, whether it's procuring raw materials, going into a production process, transporting it, putting it into a warehouse specific facility, inventory management, or customer services. So the whole primary goal of supply chain, any supply chain, whether you are in a manufacturing industry, in a textile industry, it's basically to ensure that you optimize your processes as much as possible so that you have a lot more efficiency in your business. So businesses, for instance, if you're working in a manufacturing space, you want to try and figure out how best can you get your raw materials. Is it probably looking at import? Let's say you're in the textile industry and it's looking at rolls of fabric from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, for instance. What is the landed cost of that? Or is it cheaper for you to buy it locally? So you sort of develop your supply chain based on numerous different factors. How can you make sure that it is a continuous cycle and all of the chain links are still hooked together? That's what you need to realize when you are building a supply chain. And more so, that's the definition of a supply chain. It's to make sure that you have um, cost effectiveness, you have a lot of efficiency in that in the business, and that's how you're going to take it forward. So a lot of it has to do with you making sure you are planning how you can balance your supply and your demand, how best you can source your items from raw materials to different components from suppliers, to the production process, which is making sure that your products are produced efficiently, it meets quality standards, whether you are accredited to different ISO accreditations, you are fully meeting those expectations. Um, then it comes down to transportation, which is the logistics aspect of it. How can you manage your transport um, so that your customer gets timely delivery? From a storage perspective, what does your warehouse distribution look like? So this is all things that I'm saying to you now, which we're going to expand as we go further on in the semester. But this is just creating a sort of holistic approach of what supply chain actually really is. So I put together a few examples in terms of supply chain. So it breaks it down and it allows you to understand better as to how supply chains work in different industries. So the first example here is the automotive industry. So when you purchase a car like from BMW or Mercedes or Toyota, how does it work? All right. So when we look at raw materials, we're looking at the different components that go into manufacturing a car, whether it is the steel, the rubber, the plastic, the aluminum, the glass. So all of the different components that you need to basically put together or produce a vehicle. Your suppliers is basically any company that provides the raw materials, um, and any sort of specialized parts, whether it is the door pad, the tire, battery, the GPS system, or the electronic system that sits at the front of the car, whatever it is. Then, from a manufacturer perspective, these are actual companies that assemble the components. So, as I said, Mercedes, Fords, Toyotas, BMs. And from a distribution perspective, these are how vehicles are transported to dealerships through different logistics companies. So you'll see that you have either the trucks that would transport them from, maybe it's off the ship if it's manufactured from an international perspective, or if it's local, are they putting it on a car carrier? How best are you now, making sure that you're transporting these? Your retailers are the actual dealerships that would sell the vehicle to, you and I. Your customers are you and I, so individuals that purchase the vehicles from the dealerships, and then your aftermarket is your returns service, any sort of spare parts maintenance that you have, that's provided by authorized service centers. So, in essence, this is what a supply chain looks like for an automotive within the automotive industry. It's obviously putting it into the most simplest of terms that you can. However, a lot of these supply chains are broken up into multiple supply chains. Like, for instance, if you have to look at just maybe the manufacturing part of it, they may have 5 different supply chains in the broader scope of a supply chain. It may still exist. Okay. Then the next industry I want to look at is the food industry. So the food, probably even beverages. So if we look at raw materials, you're thinking of anything like from an agricultural perspective, whether it's fruits or grains, vegetables, maybe even livestock if need be. The farmers are the people that grow and they harvest the crops or they're raising the livestock. Your processes is making sure that, or it's the companies that process raw food material into finished product, whether it is a canned food, whether it is a packaged food, whether it is a beverage, whatever that finished product or finished good looks like. Then we have packaging as an element within the supply chain, because you have suppliers that have to provide the packaging for different food products. Maybe it's something that's insulated, maybe it's paper, plastic, whatever the case may be. Then you have distribution, which is where products are transported to different distribution centers and different warehouses. You have retailers, which is your supermarkets like your Pick and Pays and your Checkers, Hypers, Spars, etc. And then your consumer or your customer, which is basically you and I that purchase these items. Is there any questions so far? I think this is probably one of the easiest examples I can give you, using our everyday sort of life on how best to look at a supply chain. And I can tell you something, after you go through the process of this module, and the modules that is still coming up for you, you will understand and you look at items very differently than what you currently are looking at. Okay. And then we have the last supply chain, which is in the textile industry or the fashion industry, we can call it. So when we're looking at raw materials from this perspective, it can be anything from a fabric. So whether it's cotton, whether it's wool, whether it's polyester, it can be your different dyes or your different zippers and buttons and all of these things. Your supplier itself will be textile mills. Maybe it's companies that specialize in zip manufacturings, button manufacturing. These can all be your suppliers. Manufacturers are the ones that are your clothing company or clothing manufacturers that cut or sew or they assemble different garments together. From a distribution perspective, it is warehousing and logistics companies that transport the finished garments from a manufacturer perspective into your retailer. So whether it is Edgar's or Fashion Fusion or Jet or Ackerman's, Mr. Price, etc., or any sort of online boutique. Basically, that's who the transport is then sent through to. And then your customer is basically you and I, who purchase it. So this is basically supply chain in a, say, in a more generalized term. It does get a lot more complicated for many, many businesses. But this is just so that you have a brief understanding on exactly what supply chains look like. So the theme one is not very long, but it just provides a little bit of insight into what is supply chain, if that makes sense. So I'm going to obviously be sharing a lot of information with you today. So please don't get overwhelmed at all. I can 100% guarantee you that we're going to still be expanding this as we go through the semester. But some of the current trends of supply chain management, when we look at it, the first one, and probably one of the biggest ones right now, especially looking at this era or modern era, is digital transformation. So, with the internet, with artificial intelligence, with automation, it is next level how digital transformation has actually changed businesses. So, for one, if we have to look at automation, a lot of businesses are introducing things like robotics and automation into their warehouses or into different production lines in order for them to have better efficiency. They have less human error as well, which makes a huge difference. So I remember watching a video, which I'm going to actually find and share it with you, on YouTube, where you can find, especially in first world, sort of more developed countries, their logistics scope and the way that they build out their logistics or operations floor is next level. So in South Africa currently, and I'm speaking to you from experience, let's say, for instance, because I work in the courier industry, if I get a 12-meter truck full of cargo, okay, let's say small to medium-sized parcels, I've got an average of 5,000 shipments in that one truck. This truck is manually offloaded with humans, okay, onto a belt. The belt then basically scans the items onto, into the floor. Let's just say into the floor, and then from there, humans have to take the parcels out and sort it into various bays. Okay, so that's how logistics or couriers work. The bays reflect different areas in a region or in a province or in a city that you would work in or live in, for you to then conduct the delivery. However, in your first world countries, all of this is automated, meaning that there's claw machines that's literally taking the shipments out of a truck, putting it onto conveyor belts. The conveyor belts are then sorting it into different areas, and then it's being basically rolled into where a driver bay is for a driver to take it out. Let's not talk about the fact that there's now driverless cars. So it is still going into more and more of a developed, in a developing stage. There was huge things about drone deliveries. There was stuff about robotic deliveries, especially if you are in a specific location in like a central hub where all you needed was a unique OTP, for instance. You put in the OTP into the device and the device shoots out your parcel. So this is where digital transformation is coming from and where it's taking not only logistics, but production and manufacturing into a whole new era. Um, when we look at something like like the internet, we're using different connected devices to track inventory, to monitor equipment, optimize logistics. I remember going into a customer not too long ago, and I walked in there, and it was this huge, 7,000 square meter facility. A whole bunch of stacking in their facility, and they were in the retail industry or retail sector, retail textile sector, and it basically allowed for them to have almost like 60 to 70 staff because everything was so manual. They sort of had to know by mind where black shirt, size large is sitting in this warehouse. Whereas now everything is barcoded, everything has a place, everything has a little pigeonhole where they can sit in. It makes picking process so much easier. I don't think we in South Africa have gotten into a fine picking automation mode as yet, but the sorting of it has gotten to be quite advanced in terms of tech and internet and automation, etc. And then artificial intelligence. I mean, we all use AI at some time. ChatGPT is a big friend of everybody's. I also use it in my place of work, when I have to do these fancy reports and, show these fancy graphs. And, if I'm just feeling very dumb on the day and I want to ask a stupid question, we all use AI for reasons that we sometimes cannot even explain. Um, but we're using it for the right reasons, hopefully. From a logistics perspective, AI can assist with whether it's route planning or optimizing your route. I remember sometime for my sins, and also being in this industry that is sometimes not as rewarding as you would like. Um, you have to jump in your car and help out. When things go south, you have to do it. And I remember one year, probably a good 4 or 5 years ago, I jumped in my car, said, okay, I'm helping operations today. I'm going to go out and do a few deliveries, just so that we can clear out some of the backlog that we had. And I jumped in my car and they handed me 20 parcels. And I said, right, I'm going to deliver this. I would start at A, end up in Z, come back to B, then go to Z again, go back to A. I had zero route planning because I have no experience in it, like drivers would. I went with what I knew, and I used my GPS a lot, but it doesn't always help. So using a tool like whether it's AI or just a normal, process system tool that allows you to do better route planning or optimizing your route, it helps majorly. Even if it's demand forecasting, if you're in a production space, you want to forecast what your demand is going to be over the next financial year. So looking at previous data, working on a 10-20% markup or margin, or bulk up. What is your forecasting going to be? So artificial intelligence does help a massive portion of it. Okay, the next one is sustainability and green logistics. So a lot of businesses now in various different industries all have sustainability practices now. And I have a feeling at some point it's going to go into something that is a prerequisite like triple BEE. What is your eco-friendly practices that you're doing as a business? How is your carbon footprint being reduced? What energy efficiency are you bringing into the to the country or to the world? From a sustainability side, is it recyclable packaging, for instance, waste reduction? So needing to think more along that level and that trend. Then the next one, which is one of my favorites, and I'll be speaking a lot about it during this semester, is e-commerce and also looking at it from an omni-channel perspective. So e-commerce is the way to go. I'm pretty sure sort of post-COVID, all of you know, um, not many of us walk into shops, not many of us walk into malls anymore. We buy a lot of what we require online, whether it is the convenience of Checker 6060, which is brilliant, by the way, whether it's buying stuff off Takealot or Amazon or, little small boutique shops that you get, or even buying a Nike sneaker from, overseas because your delivery can be done in like 4 or 5 days. Um, E-commerce is taking over. The full-on solution with e-commerce has really made people move from having actual brick and mortar to having an online platform where they're funneling all of their funds into to give customers a really good delivery experience, or customer experience, whether it is a last mile delivery solution where you are trying to be innovative as possible, where you can meet the customer's demand for, whether it's a faster or a flexible delivery option, maybe looking at something from a decentralized warehousing where you're holding stock in like Johannesburg and Cape Town and Durban. So you're facilitating faster to market. These are some of the ideas that supply chains are looking for in order for them to have more efficiency. Um, or is there anything from a warehouse automation perspective so that you can handle the high volumes of e-commerce orders? The barcoding helps, the digitization helps, but how much better can you do in order for you to push that e-commerce? I know during Black Friday, it is a royal rush for most e-commerce platforms. Some of them die down. I mean, I haven't heard of one dying down in a while, but when Black Friday was sort of like first in the country, that first year, just most of these sites had gone down. So everyone building a lot more sustainable experience and site in order for you to facilitate, um, your order and your experience through there. And then the last one is personalization and customer experience. So a lot of businesses now are trying to look at something more customized, whether it is a piece of jewelry that you are purchasing from an online site. You now have the ability to engrave different personalized items that you want on it. Um, it does allow for individual preferences to be taken into account. And it's also used within the manufacturing process because you're taking the actual customer's order into account. In your manufacturing process. And it does allow for better competition between these different suppliers per se, because they are trying to think out of the box on how best they can innovate their supply chain at the end of the day. Okay, is there any questions so far before we move on to the next one? Okay, I think we are almost to the end of our slides. But the last one that we have is our supply chain drivers, we would like to call them. And this is basically looking at our supply chain performance drivers. It's looking at different factors in a specific business or within the different industries that influences your efficiency, influences your effectiveness, and also influences your overall performance of your supply chain. So us as individuals in a business, we need to understand and optimize these drivers so that it can help the business to achieve better results, mainly from an ops or a profit perspective, increase customer satisfaction, and also try and have as much cost savings as we possibly can. So one of the main ones is facilities. So here we're looking at location. Where is the different placement of the site? So whether you have a production site or a warehouse or a distribution center, what is the proximity to your supplier or to your customer or to the different transport hubs? Because it can help to reduce lead time. It can help you with the cost perspective. So a lot of businesses are situated, let's say, in Durban because the port's right here. So it makes sense for them to actually have all of their stock quickly from port or from harbor, so that they can run the last mile distribution thereafter. So it's just looking at those different various factors that's involved. Inventory, to understand your amount of inventory that is held at every stage of your supply chain, balancing your inventory levels to help meet your customers' demand without having too much of holding cost. Because what happens is when you hold too much of stock, especially if it's stock that has an expiration date, you end up with a lot of obsolete stock. So you want to try and avoid that cost as much as you possibly can, using different techniques, whether it's a just-in-time technique, which means that you are manufacturing a specific item just in time for when you need to sell it. You're not manufacturing it because you need to store it for a long period of time. So that's obviously one of your performance drivers. Then we have information, and with information, it's data is king. So ensuring you have data integrity or data accuracy at every step of the way, ensuring that your data on inventory levels are kept up to date, your order status is accurate, that's kept up to date. And there's a lot of technology that one can use right now in order to manage your data accuracy, whether it's RFIDs or blockchain or the internet. You can use a lot of, for the IoT actually, there's a lot of things that you can use in order for you to manage that accuracy and integrity as much as possible. Then we have sourcing. And sourcing can fall into different, whether it is how do we best choose a supplier, looking at different factors like cost, reliability, quality, where's your supply situated, or is it how best you can actually manage that relationship with the supplier, collaborating with them. So for instance, tomorrow you have a huge influx in demand of product and you now need to run your production process or manufacturing process. How do you get your raw materials as quickly as possible? So holding that sourcing or that supplier, at the forefront allows for a supplier to actually come to the party and help you as much as possible. So thinking of that and driving that supply chain factor into account. Then we have pricing. So controlling the sort of cost is obviously a huge thing in supply chain. You want to maintain as much profitability as possible, but you still want to be competitive in terms of your pricing. So you need to look at things that are a lot more dynamic, meaning that you are adjusting your pricing based on demand or based on competition. Um, Also, if the market conditions are asking you to do so. So whether the economy is not doing well or inflation rates increase, looking at those sort of items in order for you to justify where you're sitting at from a pricing perspective. My numbering went completely off here. I'm just noticing that now. And then the last one is we're looking at transportation or transport. And this is a huge cost factor for a lot of businesses. Looking at different modes of transport that is going to help the business, whether it's from a cost perspective or a timing or a speed perspective or just a pure reliability perspective. Sometimes, and we're going to go through the different modes of transport as we go along, and we're going to see pros and cons with it. Moving something on rail may be a cost save, but from a timing and efficiency perspective, it may not. Um, Purely based on the fact that our train rail tracks are being stolen, our cables are being cut, the rail carts are standing for days and days and days at end, running the risk of theft, running the risk of robbery from those train carts, whatever the case may be. So it's looking at the different modes of transportation, how best to route or schedule it in order for you to have less transport time and less costs. So try and, sort of break that barrier. And also manage the relationship. If you have a service provider from a transport perspective on your books, it's how best can you manage that relationship. Sometimes it helps when you horse trade, but sometimes it doesn't help when you horse trade. So playing one supply against the other from a pricing perspective doesn't always help because the relationship is not solidified as much as if you held a supplier together and sort of try to keep all your eggs in one basket. So you have all your volume in one and you now have minimal costs, economies of scale, basically. So that basically brings us to the end of this specific lecture. The last page is just my contact details for your own convenience. But yeah, this just takes us into a very brief introduction of what supply chain is. As we go along in the semester, I'll take you through some sort of key case studies and, we'll go through different elements that we have to that relates to supply chain. But for now, I think this just covers us. So I will be updating all of this information on our announcement page. So please look out for that. Recording will be done tomorrow. And then lastly, our next lecture will be not next week, but the week after. Next week will be a pre-recorded session for you, which I will then upload. Is there any questions? Are we all good? Are we all thumbs up? Perfect. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening, and I will see you again in 2 weeks' time.